It's 4 in the morning on a Saturday in July, 1997. Stafford County, Virginia. A mother is exhausted. Her 2-year-old son, Dakota, has woken up way too early, full of energy like toddlers always are at the worst possible times. She does what a lot of parents do. She puts him on the couch, turns on one of his favorite videotapes, and hopes he'll watch for a bit and fall back asleep. It's worked before. She goes back to bed. 3 hours later, she wakes up. Dakota is gone. Not in his room. Not in the bathroom. Not in the yard. Just gone. Within hours, this becomes one of the most baffling child disappearance cases Virginia has ever seen. Because here's what makes it so strange. 36 hours later, after hundreds of people searched through 100-degree heat, after tracking dogs and helicopters in an absolutely massive search operation, Dakota appears. Not lost in the woods. Not found by searchers. He just appears. On a sidewalk. In the exact same area where hundreds of people had already looked. Alive. Relatively unharmed. And nobody can explain how. This is the story of Dacota Hill. Stafford County, Virginia. Summer, 1997. The place is changing. It's 50 miles south of Washington, D.C. It used to be farmland. Quiet, rural, peaceful. But by 1997, developers are moving in fast. New subdivisions are popping up everywhere. Young families are streaming in, chasing that suburban dream. Affordable houses, good schools, safe neighborhoods. Stafford Lakes is one of these brand new developments. The grand opening banner is still hanging at the entrance. Real estate signs advertise townhouses starting at $130,000. There's a community pool, sidewalks, little patches of grass where kids can play. It's the kind of neighborhood where everyone knows each other's names, where kids ride bikes in the street, where parents feel safe. The Hill family just moved into one of these townhouses. Dakota is 2 years old, born in 1995. His parents describe him the way most parents describe toddlers at that age. Curious, energetic, into everything. He's also figured out how to unlock doors, which is both impressive and terrifying when you're the parent of a 2-year-old. Now, July in Virginia is brutal. We're talking temperatures over 100 degrees, humidity so thick the air feels like soup. It's the kind of heat that keeps people inside during the day, everyone running their air conditioners, only venturing out in the evening. So it's Saturday morning, July 26th. 4 a.m. Dakota wakes up. Way too early. His mother is exhausted. What parent isn't when their toddler wakes up at 4 in the morning? She brings him to the living room, puts him on the couch, turns on one of his videotapes. The plan is simple. He'll watch TV, get drowsy, fall back asleep. It's worked before. She goes back to bed. When his parents wake up around 7 a.m., Dakota isn't on the couch. He isn't anywhere. At first, they're not panicking. Toddlers wander. Maybe he went to another room. Maybe he's playing in the small patio area out back. They start checking. Bedroom, no. Bathroom, no. Patio, no. They step outside, calling his name. Nothing. They ask neighbors who are starting to come out for the day. Have you seen a little boy in pajamas? Nobody has. Minutes turn into an hour. The casual search becomes frantic. They're walking through the entire townhouse complex now, checking the common areas, looking near the pool. No sign of Dakota, anywhere. By mid-morning, they make the call. The Stafford County Sheriff's Department gets the report at about 8:30 a.m. A 2-year-old boy, last seen wearing pajamas, has disappeared from his home. And just like that, everything kicks into high gear. Deputies arrive within minutes. They're taking statements, establishing a timeline, organizing an immediate search. Because everyone who works these cases knows, with missing toddlers, every minute counts. Young children can wander into danger fast. Ponds, drainage ditches, wooded areas, busy roads. A 2-year-old doesn't understand danger. The first search focuses on the immediate area. Deputies are walking through the townhouse complex, checking common areas, looking behind bushes, searching around the community pool. They're knocking on doors, asking neighbors to check their yards, their garages, their sheds. Within an hour, the search expands. Volunteers from the neighborhood start showing up, forming search lines to comb through the nearby woods. Because the subdivision backs onto undeveloped land, thick brush, tall grass, scattered trees. A small child could easily be hidden there. By early afternoon, this has become massive. More than 100 volunteers have arrived. Word spreads through local churches, community organizations, just people hearing about it and showing up to help. The sheriff's department is coordinating with neighboring jurisdictions, bringing in more people, more resources. Then the helicopters arrive. They're equipped with infrared technology that can detect body heat even beneath tree canopy. Tracking dogs are deployed. They're given items of Dakota's clothing to establish his scent. Search teams are spreading out in organized grids, marking off areas as they're cleared. And the temperature just keeps climbing, past 95 degrees. Searchers are applying insect repellent, drinking water constantly, pushing through heat that feels like it's crushing down on them. There's a volunteer named Christopher Swartz who pauses to spray repellent on his face before heading back into the woods. Dozens of others are doing the same. Everyone is determined to find this boy before the heat does something terrible. Captain Charles E. Jett is the spokesman for the sheriff's department. As the afternoon wears on, he addresses the media. His statement is careful but honest. As each hour goes by, we become more concerned, because everyone knows what he's not saying. A 2-year-old cannot survive long in this heat without water. Dakota's great-uncle, Ben Fravel, is a sergeant with the Prince William County Police Department. He speaks on behalf of the family, and you can hear the worry in his voice. He's your typical 2-year-old boy who likes to wander off and do things, he explains. The family believes Dakota just unlocked the front door and wandered out, like he'd done before when someone was watching. But this time, nobody saw where he went. By Saturday evening, the search radius has expanded to 3/4 of a mile from the Hill residence. Think about that for a second. 3/4 of a mile in every direction. Searchers are checking every possible location where a toddler might wander or hide. Drainage ditches, culverts, construction sites, parked cars, garden sheds, under porches and decks. They find nothing. As darkness falls, they have to suspend the search until morning. Floodlights are set up around the townhouse complex. A few volunteers stay through the night, watching, listening, hoping to hear something, anything that might indicate the child is nearby. Inside the Hill townhouse, Dakota's parents are waiting, exhausted, terrified. Every time they see headlights or hear footsteps, they hope it's news. It never is. The first night passes with no sign of Dacota Hill. Sunday morning, July 27th. The heat is back. Temperatures are forecast to reach 100 degrees again. The humidity is suffocating. And everyone knows, for a small child exposed to these conditions without water, the window for survival is closing. The search resumes at dawn. More volunteers arrive. They've heard about the missing toddler through news reports, through word of mouth. By mid-morning, more than 300 people are actively searching. 300 people. The operation expands its radius to 1.6 miles. That's roughly the farthest distance investigators believe a 2-year-old could realistically travel on foot. This expanded area includes dense woods, the community pool, several shallow ponds, neighboring subdivisions. The dogs are deployed again, trying to pick up any trace of Dakota's scent. Helicopters are flying grid patterns overhead. Ground teams are moving methodically through thick underbrush, calling the boy's name, looking for anything, a piece of clothing, a footprint, any sign at all. The mood is getting darker. Experienced searchers know the window for finding a toddler alive is closing rapidly. Dehydration, heat exposure, potential injuries. Some volunteers are privately preparing themselves for the possibility that they might be searching for a body rather than a living child. The media presence has intensified. TV crews from Washington, D.C. and Richmond have set up at the subdivision entrance. They're interviewing volunteers, capturing footage, broadcasting updates throughout the day. Local parents are watching with mounting anxiety, because this isn't happening in a vacuum. Just weeks earlier, 3 adolescent girls were murdered in neighboring Spotsylvania County. Everyone remembers. Parents are scared. There's a woman named Melinda Albrecht. She has a 3-year-old daughter and 2 teenagers. She tells a reporter, "There's been so much of it lately. We don't let our kids do anything anymore." The question is haunting everyone. Is this an innocent case of a toddler wandering off? Or has something more sinister happened? Captain Jet refuses to speculate publicly about foul play. The investigation remains focused on finding Dakota, one way or another. As the afternoon sun beats down mercilessly, searchers are taking breaks to rehydrate and cool down. Some volunteers are being treated for heat exhaustion, but nobody wants to stop. Somewhere out there, they believe a 2-year-old boy needs help. By late afternoon, the same areas have been searched multiple times. The woods, the ponds, the common areas, the neighboring streets, all thoroughly combed. The dogs haven't found a sustained trail. The helicopters with infrared equipment haven't detected anything. As evening approaches on Sunday, 36 hours after Dakota disappeared, hope is fading. And then, at 9:10 p.m., everything changes. The call comes into the command center at 9:10 p.m. on Sunday evening. A child has been found. According to the initial reports, Dacota Hill has been discovered on a sidewalk in the common area of the Stafford Lakes townhouse complex. Let me repeat that. Not in the woods, not near a pond, not in a neighboring subdivision. Right there, in the development where he lives, in an area that has been searched repeatedly over the past 36 hours. Deputies rush to the scene. Dakota's grandfather, Ricky Lee Hill, later tells reporters that the family had been outside that evening when the child suddenly appeared. One moment, the sidewalk was empty. The next, Dakota was there. When deputies reach him, Dakota is alive. He's standing on the sidewalk, apparently on his own. No adults nearby. He's still wearing the same clothing he disappeared in, dirty now, disheveled, but intact. Emergency medical personnel immediately examine him. They're checking for signs of dehydration, heat exposure, injuries, trauma. And here's what's remarkable. There are no apparent signs of serious harm. No obvious injuries. No indication of violence. He appears tired and disoriented, but medically stable. Dakota is transported to Mary Washington Hospital in Fredericksburg for a complete evaluation. Doctors need to conduct thorough examinations to determine if there are any internal injuries or medical complications from exposure. But the initial assessment is astounding. After 36 hours missing in 100-degree heat, without apparent access to food or water, a 2-year-old child has been found alive and seemingly unharmed. The news spreads instantly. Searchers who had been preparing to suspend operations for the night erupt in relief and celebration. Volunteers are hugging each other. Some are crying with joy and exhaustion. TV news crews are broadcasting breaking news updates. Parents throughout the region who have been following the story feel collective relief. But almost immediately, almost before the celebration even settles, questions begin to surface. How did Dakota survive 36 hours in extreme heat without water? Where'd he been during that time? How had he eluded more than 300 searchers, tracking dogs, helicopter surveillance? And most puzzling of all, how had he been found on a sidewalk in an area that had been thoroughly searched multiple times? Captain Jet, speaking to reporters shortly after Dakota is found, acknowledges the mystery. How he managed to elude hundreds of searchers remains under investigation, he says carefully. He refuses to comment on whether investigators suspect foul play, but the area where Dakota was found is immediately sealed off for further examination. The scene is treated as an active investigation site. Crime scene technicians process the sidewalk and surrounding area, looking for evidence that might explain what happened. They're photographing the location, collecting samples, documenting every detail. At Mary Washington Hospital, doctors are conducting a comprehensive examination of Dacota Hill. And what they find is remarkable. Dakota shows signs of exposure. His skin is dirty. He has minor scratches consistent with moving through vegetation or outdoor areas. He appears fatigued, but there are no serious injuries. No broken bones. No head trauma. No signs of physical harm beyond superficial marks. Most surprisingly, he doesn't appear severely dehydrated. Think about that for a moment. Medical staff expected to find a child in acute distress from fluid loss and heat exposure. Instead, while Dakota certainly needs hydration and rest, his condition is far better than anticipated. How is this possible? Human beings, especially small children, cannot survive long without water. In temperatures exceeding 100 degrees, Dehydration occurs rapidly. A 2-year-old's body has limited reserves. Without fluid intake, a child would typically show severe symptoms within 12 to 24 hours. Lethargy, confusion, rapid heartbeat, decreased urination. Eventually, loss of consciousness. Dacota shows none of these severe symptoms. Which means what? There are possibilities, each one raising more questions. Maybe he found water somewhere during his disappearance. Maybe he drank from a pond, a puddle, a garden hose, some other water source. This would explain his relatively good condition. But where was such a source? And why hadn't search teams found evidence of it? Or maybe he was in a sheltered location that protected him from the worst of the heat. Maybe he found shade, took refuge in a structure, remained in an area with cooler temperatures. But again, where? The entire area had been searched extensively. And this is the possibility that troubles investigators most. Maybe someone had Dacota during his disappearance and then returned him. This possibility can't be ruled out. There's no obvious evidence of outside involvement, but it can't be dismissed either. Doctors keep Dacota under observation for several hours, monitoring his vital signs, ensuring he receives appropriate fluids and nutrition. They ask him questions appropriate for a 2-year-old, trying to determine where he had been and what he remembers. Dakota's responses are limited and confused. At 2 years old, his verbal skills are still developing. The experience has clearly been disorienting. He can't provide a coherent account of his 36 hours away. He mentions being outside, being tired, wanting his mother, but he offers no clear explanation of where he had been or how he survived. By late Sunday night, doctors cleared Dacota for release. He needs follow-up care and monitoring, but medically he's stable. His parents take him home, overwhelmed with relief and gratitude, but also deeply confused about what happened. While Dacota recovers at the hospital, investigators are working the scene where he was found. The sidewalk location, the timing of his appearance, his relatively good condition, all of it raises serious questions. Captain Jett's refusal to rule out foul play is significant. In cases where children are found alive after extended disappearances, investigators have to consider several scenarios. Maybe Dacota wandered away, found shelter and possibly water, and managed to survive on his own before making his way back to a recognizable location. This scenario, while possible, seems increasingly unlikely given how thoroughly the area had been searched. Or maybe he became trapped or hidden somewhere that searchers missed. Perhaps a culvert, a storage area, dense vegetation. He could have freed himself or been freed by circumstances. This could explain his sudden reappearance, though it doesn't fully explain his relatively good condition. Or the scenario nobody wants to think about. Maybe someone took Dacota, kept him for 36 hours, and then returned him when the search became overwhelming. This is deeply troubling, but it can't be dismissed. The fact that Dacota appeared on a sidewalk in a highly visible location, rather than being found hidden somewhere, suggests he either walked there himself or was placed there. Investigators interview family members again, asking detailed questions about the morning Dacota disappeared. They review the timeline multiple times. 4 a.m., Dacota wakes up. His mother puts him on the couch with a videotape. She returns to bed. 7 a.m., the parents wake to find him gone. They interview neighbors, asking if anyone saw anything unusual on Saturday morning or throughout the weekend. Had anyone seen Dacota? Had anyone noticed unfamiliar vehicles or people in the area? Had anyone heard a child crying or calling out? Most neighbors report seeing nothing unusual. The search operations have dominated everyone's attention since Saturday morning, making it difficult to remember specific details from before the search began. Investigators also examine the location where Dacota was found. The sidewalk is in a common area, visible from multiple townhouses. It's an area that had been walked through numerous times by searchers over the past 36 hours. How could a child suddenly appear there without being seen? One possibility: Dacota had been elsewhere and returned to that spot shortly before being found. But where had he been? And how had he avoided detection for so long? Another possibility: someone had placed him there, timing the return for evening when families would be outside and the child would be quickly discovered. This theory suggests planning and deliberation, which is deeply concerning. The sheriff's department processes the area as a potential crime scene, collecting evidence, documenting everything. But publicly, they release few details about what they find or what they suspect. Captain Jett's statements remain carefully worded. The investigation continues. We're grateful the child was found alive, and we're working to determine exactly what happened during his disappearance. In the days following Dakota's discovery, the story captures regional attention. Media outlets throughout Virginia and Washington, D.C. cover the case, highlighting both the relief of his safe return and the mystery of his survival and reappearance. People start talking. Theories emerge. Everyone has an idea about what might have happened. Some people believe Dakota was just more resourceful than anyone expected. Maybe this 2-year-old found water in a pond or puddle. Maybe he took shelter in a location that searchers missed. Maybe he moved around enough that he was never in the same place when search teams passed through. This theory has appeal because it credits the child's survival instincts. 2-year-olds are surprisingly resilient and adaptive. If Dakota found even minimal resources, water, shade, maybe berries or other food, he might have survived better than expected. But here's the problem with this theory. How did he elude such extensive search efforts, including tracking dogs that should have picked up his scent trail? Other people suggest Dakota became trapped or hidden in a location that was somehow overlooked during searches. Maybe a drainage pipe, a storage shed, a crawl space beneath a building. Dense vegetation that provided both shelter and concealment. This could explain both his survival, if the location offered shade and he had access to any moisture, and his sudden reappearance, if he freed himself or the situation changed, allowing him to emerge. Search and rescue experts will tell you that even thorough searches can miss things. Dense vegetation, complex terrain, the limitations of human perception. All of this means that areas can be searched and still contain hidden spaces. Then there's the Good Samaritan theory. Some people speculate that someone found Dakota, cared for him without realizing he was the subject of a massive search, and then brought him back when they learned the truth. Maybe an elderly neighbor with limited media access. Maybe someone who was away from home and returned to find a toddler in their yard. Maybe a person who initially didn't understand the situation but then realized their mistake. This theory could explain his good condition and his sudden reappearance in a visible location. But think about what it requires. Someone would have to be remarkably unaware of a search involving hundreds of people, helicopters, and extensive media coverage in their immediate area. That seems unlikely. And then there's the theory nobody wants to talk about, but everyone is thinking. What if someone took Dakota deliberately and then returned him when the attention became too intense? This theory fits certain facts. The lack of a scent trail for tracking dogs to follow. The child's relatively good condition, suggesting he had been cared for. The manner of his return, appearing in a visible location where he would be quickly found, rather than wandering out of the woods. If this theory is true, it raises terrifying questions. Why take a child? Why return him unharmed? Was it a disturbed individual who panicked when they realized the scale of the response? Was it something more calculated? Captain Jett's refusal to rule out foul play suggests investigators are taking this possibility seriously, even if they have no evidence to prove it. Experts in search and rescue operations study the Dacota Hill case with professional interest. Because the question keeps coming up, how does a 2-year-old elude such an extensive search effort? Search and rescue specialists point out several factors that can complicate searches for missing toddlers. Young children don't move in predictable patterns. Adults lost in wilderness typically follow paths, roads, terrain features. Toddlers wander randomly, following whatever catches their attention. A butterfly, a sound, a colorful object. This randomness makes their movements difficult to predict and track. A 2-year-old child is small and can hide in spaces that searchers might overlook. Dense vegetation that an adult would walk around might completely conceal a toddler sitting or lying down. Some young children, when lost and frightened, become silent and hide. They may hear searchers calling their name, but remain quiet out of fear. They may burrow into hiding spots and stay there, making detection extremely difficult. Tracking dogs rely on scent trails, but various factors can interfere. Extreme heat can cause scent to dissipate rapidly. Water features can break scent trails. If a child was carried part of the distance, no scent trail would exist for that portion. Even with 300 searchers, covering 1.6 miles of radius thoroughly is challenging. The area included dense woods, residential spaces, water features, various structures. Some locations may have been cursorily checked rather than exhaustively searched. And here's another factor. Dakota disappeared early Saturday morning. The search began within hours, but the first systematic grid searches weren't established until later that day. If Dakota moved during the initial hours before organized searches began, he could have reached locations that weren't searched until much later. Despite all these factors, search professionals remain puzzled by certain aspects of the case. The fact that Dakota appeared on a sidewalk in the townhouse complex, an area that had been heavily searched, is particularly unusual. One search and rescue coordinator, speaking anonymously about the case years later, says, "We see cases where children are found in areas that were previously searched. It happens. But the combination of factors here, the time elapsed, the good condition of the child, the location of discovery, it was unusual enough to raise questions." The Stafford County Sheriff's Department investigation continues for several weeks after Dakota is found. Investigators interview witnesses, process evidence from the discovery site, review every aspect of the timeline. In the end, no evidence of foul play is ever established. No witnesses come forward reporting suspicious activity. No physical evidence suggests abduction or outside involvement. Medical examinations show no signs of harm beyond what might be expected from a toddler spending time outdoors. The official conclusion, though never formally stated in a public report, appears to be that Dakota wandered away Saturday morning, survived through some combination of luck and circumstance, and made his way back to the townhouse complex where he was found. How he survived 36 hours in extreme heat without apparent access to sustained water sources remains unexplained. Investigators theorize he might have drunk from puddles, ponds, or other sources, though no specific evidence of this is found. Where he had been during those 36 hours remains a mystery. Despite the extensive search, there were undoubtedly small spaces, hidden locations, or areas that could have provided shelter for a small child. Why tracking dogs failed to locate him is attributed to various factors. Heat dispersing scent, water features interrupting scent trails, the complexity of the search area, the limitations of even well-trained animals. The case is closed without any charges filed or evidence of criminal activity. Dacota Hill had disappeared, survived against the odds, and returned. Sometimes investigators acknowledge there are no satisfying answers. For the Hill family, the lack of clear answers is frustrating but ultimately less important than the result. Their son is alive and unharmed. Whatever happened during those 36 hours, he survived it. In interviews afterward, family members express overwhelming gratitude to the hundreds of volunteers who searched tirelessly in brutal heat. Ben Fravel, Dakota's great-uncle, speaks emotionally about the community response. The number of people who came out, who gave their time and energy in that heat, it was incredible. We'll never forget it. The Stafford Lakes community, which had been gripped by fear and uncertainty throughout the search, slowly returns to normal. The banners come down. The command center is dismantled. Life resumes its regular patterns. But for those who participated in the search, questions linger. Volunteers occasionally discuss the case among themselves, sharing theories and wonderings. How did that little boy survive? Where was he? How do we miss him? Some accept they'll never know. Others remain convinced there's more to the story than was publicly acknowledged. A few believe the investigation was closed too quickly, that more answers could have been found with additional effort. The Dacota Hill case has immediate effects on how missing child cases are handled in Stafford County and the surrounding region. The Sheriff's Department reviews its search protocols, looking for ways to improve response times, search efficiency, and coordination of volunteer resources. While the outcome had been positive, Dakota was found alive. The investigation reveals areas where procedures can be strengthened. One significant change involved how quickly large-scale searches are organized. In Dakota's case, the full mobilization of 300 searchers doesn't occur until Sunday, nearly 24 hours after his disappearance. The department implements protocols for more rapid escalation when toddlers go missing, recognizing that the first hours are critical. The use of technology is also reviewed. While helicopters with infrared equipment had been deployed, there are questions about whether the equipment had been optimally utilized. Training for technical search resources is enhanced. Coordination with volunteer organizations improves. The outpouring of community support had been remarkable. Over 300 volunteers in brutal heat, but coordinating that many people effectively requires better systems. The Sheriff's Department develops clearer protocols for volunteer management, including safety guidelines for searchers working in extreme conditions. The case also heightens awareness among parents in the region about the risks of young children wandering. While Dakota's parents had not been negligent, they had been asleep when he left the house, and he had demonstrated the ability to unlock doors. The incident reminds all parents to review home safety measures. Hardware stores in the area report increased sales of high-mounted door locks, the kind that toddlers can't reach. Community organizations host child safety presentations. Neighborhood watch groups become more vigilant about noticing children outside without adult supervision. The incident occurs against a backdrop of heightened fear. Just weeks earlier, 3 adolescent girls had been murdered in neighboring Spotsylvania County. Parents throughout the region are already anxious about child safety. Dakota's disappearance, though it ends positively, reinforces those fears and prompts many families to implement stricter supervision of their children. Dakota's case fits into a larger pattern of missing toddler incidents that occur regularly across the United States. According to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, thousands of children under age 5 are reported missing each year. The vast majority of these cases involve children who wander away from home or caregivers and are found quickly, often within hours. But a small percentage of cases extend beyond a few hours, and these situations become increasingly dangerous. Young children are vulnerable to dehydration, temperature exposure, drowning, traffic accidents, and other hazards. The window for survival without intervention is limited. There are reasons toddlers are particularly prone to wandering. 2-year-olds are in a developmental stage characterized by intense curiosity and limited impulse control. They see something interesting, a butterfly, a dog, a colorful object, and they follow it without considering consequences or distance. Toddlers don't understand concepts like lost the way older children and adults do. They don't recognize when they've wandered too far from home or safety. They can't retrace their steps effectively. Many 2-year-olds have limited verbal skills. Even if they encounter someone who could help, they may not be able to communicate their name, address, or that they're lost. 2-year-olds can walk substantial distances, climb over obstacles, and open doors or gates. Their physical abilities often exceed their judgment and safety awareness. When lost, some toddlers become frightened and hide. They may hear people calling their name, but remain silent and concealed out of fear, making rescue more difficult. Understanding these factors helps explain how cases like Dakota's occur. A momentary lapse in supervision, parents sleeping, a caregiver distracted, a door accidentally left unlocked, can lead to a child wandering away. Once away, the child's developmental limitations and unpredictable behavior can make them difficult to locate quickly. Prevention focuses on multiple layers of protection, securing exits with locks that young children cannot manipulate, maintaining constant supervision when children are outside, teaching children their names and basic information as early as possible, creating safe environments where risks are minimized. Dacota Hill would be approximately 30 years old today, born around 1995 and disappearing in 1997. Unlike many missing child cases that remain unsolved for decades, Dakota's story had a positive resolution. He was found alive, returned to his family, and presumably grew up normally after the traumatic incident. Public records indicate the Hill family remained in the Stafford County area for some time after the incident, though like most families, they eventually moved on with their lives. The townhouse where the incident occurred has changed hands multiple times over the years, as is typical in suburban developments. Dacota himself likely has little or no memory of the event. At 2 years old, the human brain hasn't fully developed long-term memory formation. Most people's earliest memories begin around age 3 or 4. While the incident was undoubtedly traumatic for his parents and family members, Dacota himself probably doesn't consciously remember the 36 hours he spent missing. This is perhaps a mercy. The psychological impact of such an experience, if fully remembered, could have been significant. Instead, Dacota likely grew up hearing the story from family members, but without the direct trauma of personal memory. The family has maintained privacy in the years since the incident. They haven't given media interviews or public statements about the case. This is entirely understandable and appropriate. The incident was a private family matter that became public due to the search operations and media coverage, but once resolved, the family had every right to return to private life. What became of Dacota, whether he graduated high school, attended college, pursued a career, started a family, remains private information, as it should be. The public's interest in his case focused on the mystery of his disappearance and survival, not on his entire life trajectory. One hopes the incident, while frightening for everyone involved, didn't leave lasting negative effects. Children are remarkably resilient, and with supportive family and appropriate care, most recover well from traumatic experiences, especially when those experiences occurred at an age too young for clear memory formation. The Stafford Lakes development where the incident occurred continues to exist, now over 25 years old. The grand opening banner is long gone, replaced by mature trees and established families. New residents likely know nothing of the incident that gripped the community in the summer of 1997. On July 26, 1997, 2-year-old Dacota Hill disappeared from his family's townhouse in Stafford County, Virginia. For 36 hours, he was missing, the subject of one of the largest search operations the area had ever seen. More than 300 volunteers, working in 100-degree heat, searched tirelessly for a child they had never met. And then, on a Sunday evening, Dacota simply appeared. On a sidewalk, in his own townhouse complex, in an area that had been searched multiple times. He was alive. He was relatively unharmed. He had survived against odds that should have been overwhelming. But how? The official investigation closed without definitive answers. No evidence of foul play was found, so the conclusion was that Dacota had wandered away and somehow survived on his own. But the details, where he was, how he avoided searchers, how he survived without water in extreme heat, remained mysterious. Sometimes mysteries don't get solved. Sometimes, despite our best investigative efforts, despite advanced technology and hundreds of dedicated searchers, we don't get clear answers. Sometimes we're left with fragments, theories, and the simple gratitude that the outcome was positive. The Dacota Hill case reminds us of important truths. Young children are vulnerable and unpredictable. A moment's inattention, a door left unlocked, a child's curiosity, these factors can combine in dangerous ways. Prevention requires constant vigilance and multiple layers of protection. Community response matters. The 300 volunteers who searched in brutal heat demonstrated the power of community when a child is in danger. Their efforts, while they didn't ultimately locate Dacota before he reappeared, showed a commitment to protecting the vulnerable that reflects the best of human nature. Sometimes good outcomes occur without complete explanations. We may never know exactly what happened during those 36 hours. But Dacota survived, and that's what matters most. Not every mystery needs to be solved to have meaning. The Dacota Hill case has value not because we fully understand what happened, but because it reminds us to protect our children, support our communities, and never give up hope even when circumstances seem desperate. For the Hill family, the lack of complete answers was surely frustrating. But their son was alive. After 36 hours of unimaginable fear, they had him back. In the end, that was more important than understanding every detail of what had happened. For the volunteers who searched, the case represented both success and mystery. They hadn't found Dakota themselves, but their efforts kept attention focused, kept resources deployed, kept hope alive. When he reappeared, their exhausting work in brutal heat was vindicated. For the investigators, the case remained an enigma. They had done everything right, deployed resources rapidly, organized effectively, used available technology, yet the child had eluded detection until he simply appeared. It was a humbling reminder that even the best efforts don't guarantee clear outcomes. For the rest of us, hearing this story decades later, it serves as a reminder of life's uncertainties. Sometimes toddlers wander away and return mysteriously. Sometimes searches fail to find what they're looking for, only to have the answer appear when least expected. Sometimes, despite our need for explanation and closure, we have to accept that some questions remain unanswered. If you have young children, let this story motivate you to review your home safety measures. Install locks that toddlers can't reach. Supervise constantly. Teach your children their names and basic information as early as possible. Create layers of protection. If you're part of a community, let this story remind you of the power of collective action. 300 volunteers made a difference, even if the outcome didn't come in the way they expected. And if you're someone who needs answers, who struggles with mysteries, let this story teach acceptance. Sometimes we don't get complete explanations. Sometimes we have to be satisfied with good outcomes, even when the how and why remain unclear. Dacota Hill vanished in 1997 and reappeared 36 hours later. How he survived, where he was, and why he appeared where hundreds had already searched remains a mystery. But he survived, and sometimes that's answer enough. Thank you for watching. If this case affected you, please leave a comment sharing your thoughts. Subscribe to Seek Stories for more deep dives into mysterious disappearances and true crime cases.